Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Great topic for you today. Happy 2023. What's the most blood-chilling experience you've ever had? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was about 17, I had unfortunately downloaded the gay hookup app Grindr. I wasn't intentionally trying to meet up with a guy, but was curious to see what the app looked like or gay dating culture was and whatnot. Obviously, I was in the closet at the time being, but was just snooping around with a faceless profile picture. Eventually, this man had messaged me to start a convo. Being the stupid teenager I was, I had sent a picture of myself. The man didn't have his age or any pictures of himself on his profile, so I had no idea who this person was or even looked like. The man that had sent one of himself, and he looked to be closer to 40. I immediately was uncomfortable, and I said I wasn't interested and that I was sorry. The man kept messaging me constantly. Things like, "Come on, give me a chance," or "You're so hot, please let me take you out." I had no choice but to block him, as I had told him I wasn't interested nicely and shut it down. Somehow, the man kept making new accounts and trying to contact me. Every day it seemed as though a new account had been made in an effort to talk to me. I had repeatedly began to block every account that was made by this guy. I was so scared and nervous that he was going to find me some way, somehow. I remember one day at school I got a phone call that wasn't anyone I knew. I hadn't answered it and went on with my day, thinking it to be a scam call. I then get two more calls from that same number, and it scared me shitless. I immediately knew in my mind that this was that guy. I don't know how else to prove it, but it was just a gut feeling I had, so I blocked the numbers. For the next couple of days, I kept getting random phone calls from another number, and the voicemails were static sounds. There was no one talking or even breathing in the voicemails. I remember calling my best friend crying because I felt like I was being possibly stalked by this random guy. She told me that one of these days I'm going to have to answer the phone and confront him or something along those lines. So that's what I did. Once we got done talking, he called that night and I had answered the phone. I heard immediately, "You've been ignoring my calls and I've been trying to reach out to you." I immediately hung up and blocked that number. It was just gross, even hearing his voice. I understand things could have been handled differently, but again, I was a stupid, closeted 17-year-old. The good thing is, I never got any calls like that again, or voicemails. I think it was more scary at the time, being that I was a teenager who was handling this situation. But I don't even know how he had gotten my number in the first place, unless I gave it to him when we chatted, which would be even more of a stupider thing to do. I used to work as an internet service technician in Los Angeles. Scope of work included wiring from the telephone pole to people's homes and through the house, installing modems and cable boxes, etc. My repair calls were most often a complaint about speeds, and while I do everything in my power to ensure a good, clear line to the customer's modem, often, especially for senior customers, the issue turned out to be the use of an out-of-date computer that would crawl even with the best of service. One night out in Pasadena, had a service, for an older woman who lived in a straight-up hoarder house. This didn't really weird me out at the time. I'd seen strange stuff in people's homes from time to time, but no big deal. The woman was initially friendly, leading me through the narrow path of stacked-up items to her computer room. After a bit of troubleshooting, I explained that her service was running as it was supposed to, but her older computer is what was making loading pages on the internet so slow. I showed her by logging into her Wi-Fi with my iPad and showing her how fast it actually was on a newer device. This one is a tough and frustrating thing to explain to anyone, but I always did my best. Anyway, she started going back and forth from being friendly and understanding to absolutely screaming at me aggressively to fix it, refusing to accept what I was telling her. After a while, it was kind of just a standstill. I couldn't really do anything else for her, and I was getting freaked out, so I tried to politely make my way out, telling her I could send her a different tech the next day if she'd like. This woman follows me out of her house, and I'm trying to walk faster and faster. Once I get out the door, and she's following me down the street, screaming and begging me to come fix her shit. I get to my van and crank the ignition and get the F out, and the woman reaches my van and throws herself on the hood to prevent me from leaving, I guess. I freeze because I don't want some horrible accident to happen, and I don't know what to do. Finally, I slowly back up, hoping she'll not continue to lean on my van and just stand on her feet. Luckily, she does, so I back up fast and flip the fastest U-turn I think I ever have, because she moves to stand in the middle of the road right in front of me. I get turned around and speed the F out of there, this woman still running after my van in the rearview mirror. One time when I was on a deer hunting trip, I was walking to my stand when I heard a rather close gunshot. Of course, hearing the odd gunshot during deer season is perfectly normal, so I didn't really think twice. But then a chunk was blown out of a tree right beside me, and I immediately hit the dirt. I just stayed there until nightfall because I was too scared to even move. I'm pretty sure it was just a freak occurrence, but then again, maybe it was something else entirely. Yeah, somebody might have been trying to shoot you in the head thinking you were a deer. I saw a biker fall off his bike and roll right into a pickup truck, his head coconutted. It sounded like you think it sounds. The pickup didn't stop. It was a big F-350 dually, and he honestly may have been totally oblivious. It was all on the other side of a divided road on an overpass, so I couldn't actually get close to accident site or see up close, which is good for me. I just went to work. There was nothing to do. There were plenty of people on the other side, and they were upset though. I was a bored teenager in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. I was just sitting and staring out my window. No idea why. Just was from boredom, I guess. Maybe I heard someone. I don't really remember exactly why. Anyways, one car was sitting there doing nothing, being idle. Another pulled up behind it. People got out. Stuff was exchanged. I assume it was drugs and money. Heroin was really popular around that time near where I lived. Anyways, one of the dudes turned and saw me sitting at my window. On the first floor, he came bolting towards the window. I never moved so effing fast in my life. I ran into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and went to my bathroom. Figured if they came into the house and tried to get me in the bathroom, they would have to funnel in, and I would have the knife, meaning I could potentially defend myself. Nothing ever happened. They left it alone, I guess, but I was terrified. I used to be a park ranger, and I was checking the bathrooms at one of our parks. There was maybe 1 to 2 other cars in the parking lot. I knocked on the door and announced myself. I'm a woman, before opening the door to the men's room. There were 2 stalls, and I could tell that there was someone in one of them. I could hear breathing, but like they were trying really hard to be quiet. I called out a few other times, and I could still hear them, but they never said anything. I just got this awful feeling come over me. I immediately backed out and went back in my truck. I stayed in the parking lot for a while to see if anyone would come out, but after about 10 minutes, I had to leave because I had other stuff I needed to do. It just chilled me to the bone, because I was like, what was that dude doing in there? And why was he trying so hard to be quiet? There has been a few for sure, but I'd say watching my brother fall off an 80-foot cliff takes the cake. We were walking along the cliffside, tossing small rocks off the cliff, and he picked a bigger one, maybe 10 pounds or so. Went to toss it, and the moss under his foot tore away. He fell on his ass, but his forward momentum carried him off the edge. I could hear him yelling in pain, so I knew he was alive, but I fully expected him to have shattered legs or broken spine. Imagine my surprise when I made my way down and he was standing up. He was okay ultimately, but he had several broken ribs, a collapsed lung, and a ruptured spleen, as well as many scrapes and bruises. They put him out in the hospital for a few hours, and when he woke, his first words were, "So I guess I can't fly, can I?" He's incredibly lucky to be alive, and even more so to not have any lifelong injuries from it. Guy's tough as a hammer. Was on the beach at Belle Isle here in Detroit with my girlfriend on Memorial Day this year, and it was near sundown, and we were packing down from the same spot we've been sitting every beach trip a few times a week whenever it's warm enough. That day was exceptionally beautiful. We were taking armloads of stuff from the beach to our dinghy at the shore in preparation to boat back to the marina, and for whatever reason, my girlfriend made both of her trips at a near run versus the leisurely walk I was making, which sped up our departure by maybe 30 seconds. There was a family that had recently emigrated from Yemen there with women in burqas that we'd noticed not far away from us. That really stood out because it was almost 90 degrees that day. As we were making the last trip to the dinghy, we heard a car gunning its engine on the road near the beach and saw it swerve onto the sand and plow through the Yemeni family, sending the father and older daughter ricocheting off of the sides of the car, and the youngest, only 12, up and over the car, maybe 8 feet in the air, before landing in the sand about 15 feet from where she was. My girlfriend and I ran to where the youngest had landed, and I watched her take her last breaths. Pink, cloudy mists of blood and sand mixed together. Then I watched the lights go out of her eyes, and it was like looking at a doll. My girl pulled me away and said we should get out of there because there was nothing more we could do. And as I looked back and saw the car's tire tracks had gone through exactly where we'd been sitting on the beach not 30 seconds ago. I can still see that little girl's life drain out of her. I can still hear the wailing of her mother and father. I can still see those tracks in the sand where we'd been moments ago. I wake up to it every morning and lots of times in the middle of the night. Don't know if I'll ever really be past it. Probably the time me and my family got swatted by the police on Christmas 2020 at 5:30 in the morning. I was already like half asleep because I could never sleep on Christmas Eve, and I was going to get up and grab some water when I heard a knock at the door. Now, I'm half asleep. I thought I was just imagining things, but I heard it again, this time louder. So I go get my dad and said, "Hey, I think someone's knocking on our door." So we both walk over to it, and this time it's like they kicked it, and they said, "This is the sheriff's department, Brad," my father's name. So I'm flipping out now. By now, my brother and mother have woken up, and my dad begins to open the door, and 3 cops all have their guns pointed at him. One of them have like that beanbag non-lethal shotgun. My dad just kind of stumbles out and is like, "What is it?" I guess the cops didn't see a threat or anything, lowered their guns and verified it was really him. They explained they were there because someone had called from the Colorado Department of Corrections, saying something along the lines of how my father was suicidal and was going to kill his family and then himself. Now, we know no one from Colorado who could have made this call, and we don't even live in Colorado. So to this day, we have no idea who called and why. Since none of us were going back to sleep after that, we just effing opened our presents at 6 in the morning. Scariest 15 minutes ever. It's an experience we now joke about during the holidays. We always go, "Let's hope we don't get raided by the police this time." In other words, we laugh about it now. That's just horrible. I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm glad you're alive. I'm sorry you had to witness those people lose their lives or that little child. But there's beaches in Detroit? Not the biggest thing, but it's the one I just can't explain. It was about a year or 2 ago. I was on my phone when I hear what sounds like an audio message of my friend saying, "Can you call my phone? I've lost it." The voice sounds identical to that of my friend, and so I call her phone. She picks up and asks why did I call her. I told her that she told me to call her since she had lost it. She responded saying she never sent me an audio message, but thanked me since she had actually lost her phone, and me calling was what would allow her to find it. I end the call in disbelief. I check our messages, and she was right. She never sent a message. Plus, she has lost her phone. How could she have sent that message? To this day, I can't think of how that could be possible, and it scares me. It's too absurd to be a coincidence that I hear my friend's exact voice asking me to call her phone the moment she lost it. The house I grew up in was almost 100 years old when I was born, and the 3rd floor always had a bad feeling to it. Everyone in my family has seen or experienced something on the 3rd floor in that house. For the most part, it was harmless, just creepy. When I was 12, I had a terrifying experience, though. I was in my room on the 3rd floor doing homework. I was sitting there working when I suddenly felt cold and had this overwhelming feeling of dread suddenly out of nowhere. I felt like something was behind me, but I was too scared to look behind me. I sat there frozen, not knowing what to do. Then my fight or flight instinct took over. I kicked the chair out from under me and ran down the hall to the stairs. I stopped and looked back towards my room and saw a dark floating mass in the doorway, slowly coming down the hall towards me. I felt safe once I was on the second floor, where my family was watching TV. I never told them what happened until a few years ago. We moved out of that house in 1990 when I was 14. I dream about that house from time to time, but they're always horribly scary nightmares. Mine told me he had a similar experience on the third floor when I was little. I really think there was something not right on that third floor. That just could be parallel universes combining right there, the multiverse clashing together, or, some, I don't know. What do you think? Buckle up, pun intended. Yes, I have a weird sense of humor. The setup. Our class trip in 6th grade took us on a few hours drive to a theme park. We spent the day at the theme park and then drove back in the dark for a few hours. It was 2 or 3 of those charter buses with a bathroom on board, so we didn't have to stop for more than gas, if at all. That was the hope. The highway we took only has lights near the major metropolitan areas. Mostly it's just pitch black at night. What happened? Most everyone was asleep at this point, but I was up reading a book. I see a car pass our buses, and some time goes by. I was like 12, so I have no idea exactly how much time, but it wasn't very long. Suddenly, we come to a full stop rather quickly. Some people are woken by the stop. An adult gets on the intercom and makes an announcement that we need to move to one particular side of the bus. Everyone needs to be woken up. Adults are waking children and moving them, but there's not exactly space for everyone to sit. The buses then slowly start to move again, making nearly a 90-degree turn across the 2 lanes to go into the grass median. And then we saw it. Up ahead, a car was on fire, upside down. The adults are telling us to look away and get to one side of the bus, but I'm glued in place. No other cars are around, and there wasn't anything for the car to run into. As we inch closer, we start to feel the inferno. After some amount of time, it seemed like everything had frozen and yet was going fast forward now. We are level with the car. The adults are busy trying to calm children, communicate with other buses and chaperones in their own cars, but my eyes are glued to the car. I can see the driver, slumped to the ground. It looks like the neck was snapped, and I could see the hair fizzling off the skull from the heat. I can already see some of the skin has burnt off his face, and it's even gotten to bone. It's not a pretty sight. I couldn't look away. It wasn't just warm, it was blazing hot, like I had a severe fever across every bit of my skin. It lit up everything. But because of the bus size, we had to literally inch through the grass median. The driver's seatbelt may have been used. It didn't see it, though could have burnt apart at that point. It wasn't until we were past the car and back on the road that I could tear my eyes away. I had even started to turn in my seat. It will always live rent-free in my head. Whenever I get reminded of it, it's not just the image. I start to feel the heat from the fire again. It's wild and not something I would wish on anyone else.